I'm Isabelle Gonthier, Chief Assessment Officer at PSI Services, and I invite you to delve deep into the world of testing with me. Every episode, I'll be on the virtual couch with experts from the testing industry, engaging in conversations about the latest developments in our field. Your quest for testing knowledge starts here. Well, welcome to this episode of the Tried and Tested podcast. I'm super excited to be here in Dallas, Texas at the COABE conference. And we're going to be talking about breaking barriers and building futures for adult education. And we're going to have an angle around New Mexico. And we have today two amazing guests. I'm super excited to introduce you to Dr. Amber Gallup. She's the State Director of Adult Education, New Mexico Higher Education Department. Welcome, Amber.
Thank you.
And then we have Jamie Trujillo, Executive Director, New Mexico Adult Education Association. Welcome.
Thank you.
Great to have you. So it's great to be here at the conference because there's lots of great conversations happening, lots of great energy. So we're going to be building from that as we go through the conversation around breaking barriers. So first off, we always start our podcast with a similar question to our guests, just to getting a little bit to know you better in terms of how did you get into this field? How did you get into the adult education world? What's your story? And we can start with you, Amber.
My whole career has been in adult education in some form or another. I started as a Spanish teacher in college and then got my master's in teaching English to speakers of other languages. But my real passion in the beginning there was popular education and labor organizing. So I worked in labor organizations, labor support organizations for many years. And I had a small business where I taught the English of the trade in labor union apprenticeship programs around the D.C. metropolitan area. So I taught English for iron workers, English for electricians, for plumbers, for laborers, for roofers for many years. And through that, also developed a love of, working with adult English language learners. I started working in instructional design and really started working also then later in healthcare apprenticeship programs and pre-apprenticeship programs. But there was one experience I had in all of this, the different kinds of adult education consulting that I was doing. And that was, I was working at the Center for Applied Linguistics. And they sent me around to different states. And I helped do professional development for English language teachers. And through that, I met some state directors. And I right away zeroed in to that is the job for me. And then I was basically like just a heat-seeking missile for the rest of my, the next 10 years trying to find an opportunity to become a state director of adult education. And I finally was able to do that 4 years ago. And I just love it. It's a joy.
Yeah, and it's great. You had a purpose and you sort of made things happen based on building on your experience, your passion.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love every minute of it. And I'm so happy that I have the honor of being able to do the work that I want to do.
Oh, absolutely. This is great. And what about you, Jamie?
Well, like Dr. Gallup, I have spent my entire career in adult education purely by accident. I had originally gone to school for psychology. My goal was to be in some kind of counseling field, and that kind of changed as I went along. But life sometimes happens when you're planning other things. And, oddly enough, have my own podcast, shameless plug. New Mexico has its own podcast.
Oh, that's great. And, okay, we'll make a note of that.
Yes. It's called Connect with Adult Ed. And in one of our most recent episodes, the host and I went into detail about our backstories. So if you want more details, you can go there. But long story short, as I was 20 years old, made some really poor choices that landed me in federal prison for 4 years. And when I went there, I was a new college graduate, and my attorney told me that I had an opportunity. There were people there that couldn't even read. And he said, don't waste that opportunity. Take it. I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. And I held on to that. It was like a lifeline for me. So shortly after going in, I was able to get a job with the education department and taught there for the duration of my sentence and came back to New Mexico. Oddly enough, I was in Fort Worth, Texas. like
Okay.
right here. But I came back to New Mexico. That's where I'm from, and got a job with a nonprofit that I worked for 15 years. Did everything from instruction to data entry, supervisory roles, program director, and got involved with the state association pretty early on, and just really loved being involved with professional development, and found that that was really where my niche was. And even more so as I got more into being with the state association and eventually becoming the executive director, which is my absolute dream job. I just absolutely love it. My biggest passion is working with the students and training them to be student ambassadors and being advocates on a legislative level and on a community level. And I've had the utmost honor to be able to do that over the last 3 years. It's been wonderful training these students, and it's almost like being in the classroom again, but just to such a wonderful level, and I'm very grateful for that.
It's amazing the impact that it has on people's life, those students' life, in terms of the opportunity it brings to them and the impact that in your role, like what you've just described, is having. So wow, it's very rewarding, I'm assuming.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, I think it's interesting because we're going to see a lot of connections, obviously, from a adult education standpoint and assessment, which is sort of like a lot of the focus of what we've been discussing on this podcast. But I thought it was a great opportunity to connect those two together, especially as it relates to what we do at PSI with the HiSET battery of tests, and being able to kind of like open up the box a little bit more and talk about these very important elements and concepts, and why we do what we do, why you do what you do. So thank you again for being part of this conversation. So let's kind of zero in a little bit on, the adult education landscape, specifically in New Mexico, and the community it serves. So, if you can give us a little bit more information there, Amber, from your perspective.
Sure. Well, New Mexico is a big, beautiful state, one of the most beautiful states in the union. Fifth largest by geographical size, but one of the smallest populations. We're a majority minority state with 23 pueblos, tribes, in the Navajo Nation. And a large Hispanic population as well. So we've got a wide diversity in New Mexico. And there are, I think, because of the rural nature of the state and some of the, kind of like systematic oppression that that New Mexicans have gone through for centuries, we have, we're actually ranked 50th in adult literacy, unfortunately, in the nation. We are ranked 47th for adults with a high school equivalency or diploma. And so we do have some barriers to overcome. There is poverty in the state, as I said, from many generations of systemic oppression, and as a result, we have our work cut out for us as adult educators in New Mexico in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no. And I think that it makes it even more salient and important to really kind of like put the focus on what can, and from a state standpoint, from an individual standpoint, what can you do to help support the community?
Absolutely. I often say that, waking up every morning as the adult education director in New Mexico, in a state that's 50th in adult literacy, really focuses me in on my job.
Yeah.
I take it very seriously and think a lot about how we can build the foundation to really move the needle in New Mexico.
Yeah. And then kind of building from that, and then the reference to the HiSET, assessment, and from a high school equivalency standpoint, how does it serve pathways for adult learners, specifically in, when you think about what you're doing, but, let's connect the dots with HiSET and what it does for your community.
Well, absolutely. So what we've learned is that in New Mexico, an adult with a high school diploma or the equivalent, if they've used the HiSET or the GED test, in New Mexico we have both. They earn about $6,500 more annually on average if they have that degree. So in very real terms, right, this helps our communities, get ahead. And of course, what we've learned is that most family-sustaining careers, nearly all of them require a high school diploma or its equivalent. And since we're, like I mentioned, we're 47th in the nation, and high school diplomas are equivalents among adults, HiSET and, and the adult education and adult literacy systems play a big role in, being that stepping stone into family-sustaining careers in New Mexico.
Yeah, it really supports to and assists students and learners to get to the next level,
Yes.
to position themselves for success.
It's critical.
Yeah. Jamie, there's been some important legislation in New Mexico recently related to funding, access, and student support. And that really changed the landscape for adult education. So for our listeners, can you talk through what some of those changes have been and the impact it's been having on learners?
Absolutely. I think one of the most important bills that just recently was passed in this last legislative session was House Bill 167. And Amber hit the nail on the head with the importance of what a high school diploma or credential means for a person economically. And one of those barriers to getting that done is the testing fee itself. And so this year we had a bill that was proposed that would make HiSET and GED testing free for all New Mexicans. And we would be only the 5th state to have 2 tests where this would, come to pass and impact any New Mexican who wanted to do that. And I really can't emphasize enough the importance of removing that little barrier. When you are a person who has been told for years and years that you are not going to succeed, or who do you think you are? Especially in a generational home where you might be the first person to graduate high school. Who do you think you are? Why do you deserve this? So any excuse to not take that test, to not succeed, could be a major barrier, even psychologically, even if it isn't financially. So removing that barrier has been just this amazing feat. And I will say that, we have these wonderful legislative champions in the House and in the Senate, bipartisan champions who really honed in on adult education this legislative session. And thanks to the work of those legislative champions, thanks to the work of the state office, of course, Amber was there almost every day at the Roundhouse, making sure that she was available if they had any questions. We had student ambassadors who showed up to committee hearings. I showed up to committee hearings. We testified in favor of this bill as much as we could. We had email and phone call campaigns from the whole field. They knew who we were. And that was so important when it came to this bill. And it was so interesting that it got passed in the last 2 minutes of the session. And Amber was sitting right there when it happened. I got that text message.
Wow.
It was very interesting. We learned so much about how politics work, how much effort it takes to pass a bill. Just from this one bill. It was really amazing. And so that, I would say, as far as legislation is concerned, is the biggest milestone that we passed this year. Another bill that passed last year, and I think I'll let Amber talk more about this, was House Bill 303, which is the first of its kind on a state level, but it pays living stipends to participants in integrated education and training programs. So as you know, these programs can be very intensive. And if you're working, again, another barrier. We're all about reducing or removing these barriers for our students. If you have a job, it's very hard for you to also then go to class, especially if it's an intensive credentialing program like an IET. And so by providing these stipends, it is going to make it possible for more people to participate in these IET programs. And Amber, I don't know if you wanted to add anything about that bill in particular.
Yeah, I wanted to just add, so everything Jamie said is correct. And what's exciting is that the state saw so much potential in this. HB 303, which passed last year that Jamie was just mentioning, was a small pilot program. We were only going to be able to give these monthly stipends, which are free of strings, really. People can use it for whatever they need to do. The purpose is to encourage persistence and completion of these programs. So it was a small pilot program that we could just use for a few students. However, this year, the legislature invested an additional $2 million in that fund. So even that won't allow us to provide this stipend to every single IET student in New Mexico, because we are growing a lot with integrated education and training programs in New Mexico adult education, but it will help us serve, of course, many, many more. And I should say, I think it's important to note, those states who are listening, that we were able to accomplish this and another bill that I would like to mention just briefly this year through everything that Jamie mentioned, and also the support of an organization, an amazing organization in New Mexico called Somos un Pueblo Unido. We are a united people. It's an organization of organizers for immigrant rights across the state, and they have a very clear agenda, and they really helped us see they're a way that we have access to our students who are English language learners in New Mexico, and they helped us understand what it was their students are saying that they needed. And HB 303, basically a guaranteed basic income pilot for IET students at the state level, was really a way that they helped us see that, that we can work together, both to pass legislation and to serve learners better. And finally, since we're on the topic of legislation and reducing barriers, I really feel like I need to note that this legislative session in New Mexico, we also passed House Bill 64, which is a way to allow undocumented adults who have attended adult education programs for at least a year, the equivalent of a year, will now, for the first time in New Mexico, have access to in-state tuition, which in any of our publicly funded colleges or universities, which is a big deal for us. And in New Mexico, it's a particularly big deal because New Mexico has the most progressive free college program in the nation. It's called the Opportunity Scholarship. So when you give people access to in-state tuition, you also give them access to completely free college.
Wow, this
tuition-free college.
Yeah, this is powerful and amazing. Again, thinking about the impact that it has, and addressing like very, very pressing needs that you've described that you have. And now a short break. Hello, tried and tested listeners and fellow testing enthusiasts. I'm Isabelle Gonthier, your guide through the fascinating world of credentialing. Each week, we dive deep with expert guests to explore the hottest topics in certification and licensure testing. If you're enjoying our journey through lifelong learning and innovation, take a moment to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And if you know someone passionate about testing or curious about the latest testing trends, why not share this podcast with them? It might just be the inspiration they need. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our community. Remember, sharing knowledge is one of the best ways to grow our industry together. Keep listening. How can other states kind of build from like the success that you've been having and the learnings through the process? And obviously there's going to be different needs depending on the nature of what the challenges are, barriers are, but there's some barriers that are probably very similar. So maybe starting with you, Jamie, what would you see as like key elements that you would say, hey, focus on that or think about this, or key pieces of advice?
Sure. I think there's two things to really hone in on. And the first, and I think it's a big umbrella term, it's relationships. Developing relationships with local representatives and senators, making sure that their local people, everybody has their own local legislators, making sure that their local people are aware of adult education, that they invite them to their programs so that they can see their classes in action. I can tell you the sponsor of House Bill 167, Joy Garrett, started her relationship with adult education by going and seeing some local programs in Albuquerque. And since then, she's been a very outspoken champion of adult education. And so when you find those, you need one or two very outspoken legislative champions, particularly those who are on key committees like the finance committees. Those are really important relationships. So building those relationships. And in that, it goes to my second point, is cultivating your student ambassadors, cultivating those students who are willing and able to tell their stories, because the legislators are going to want to hear from those who are directly impacted by this funding. They want to see their return on investment in action. So when you have a student or two with you at every single meeting, when you have a student who is very vocal on social media, who is tagging all these legislators, they're thanking these legislators, that is so crucial in making progress toward making sure that adult education and literacy is heard and understood. So those are the two big key things for
Yeah,
me.
no, they're very important. And I think that what I see is visibility, awareness, and being able to have people that will be able to speak to the message, the narrative, and showcase like the impact it had on them individually, which it makes it extremely powerful.
Absolutely. I think adult education for some legislators is very misunderstood or invisible. So when you bring that student voice in, when you tell that student story, it makes it visible and it makes it understood. No two student stories are the same.
Yeah.
And so it totally breaks that stereotype of what it means to be an adult education student,
Yeah.
because there are so many variations of what that actually means, so many variations of the potential of what they want to do, and the answers to so many questions that these legislators have. For example, how are we going to fill all these jobs that we do not have skilled workers for?
Mm.
Adult education is the
There you
answer to
go.
that.
Yeah.
So, yes, making it visible, making it understood is very
Yeah.
crucial.
Building the case, and yeah, absolutely. Anything else you would want to add, Amber, in terms of what you would say, other elements to consider for other states that would want to build from those successes?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the things that Jamie mentioned are just crucial. And, from the state office perspective, two things that I've learned, as Jamie mentioned, we've learned just an awful lot
Yeah.
this year. I feel like my learning curve is just straight up and down. And one thing that I think is really important for states to know is just how early you need to begin. If you have a goal, like we did with HB 167, the free high school equivalency tests, we needed to start just as soon as the last legislative session ended. So we did that. We did our calculations. We decided what we wanted to fight for. We started building support within our cabinet leadership and with our governor's office on this, and then of course with legislators very, very early. So I think that's important. I think in the past we sort of come up with these things a little closer to the beginning of the legislative session, and by then what I've learned is that it's too late. The budget was decided many months ago. So that's a big lesson for me, and that has helped this year, as we can see. In addition to the bills that we passed that we just mentioned, we also got $17 million additional dollars for adult education for the first time. The second thing I would say is a real focus on return on investment.
Yeah.
People often look at adult education as something secondary, something that is really not that important, right, in the state. They don't really understand the value that we bring in real terms. They look at us as a social safety net program instead of what we truly are, which is a workforce development program, especially in the new economy that we have. So I think making that case really directly, and especially doing the calculations that you need to do for return on investment, makes a big deal. So for example, I mentioned that it's just one example. I'll say that, what we learned is that New Mexicans with a high school diploma or its equivalent make about $6,500 more on average annually. Well, we did the calculation about, assuming how many people normally graduate with their high school equivalencies in New Mexico each year, coupled with, assuming like a 10% state income tax rate, we found that in 1 year alone, New Mexico would make up more in income tax alone than in the cost of just providing these tests free for all New Mexicans. So it was a win-win. And when we were able to make that point, legislators said, well, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Let's do this. And I think that you have to do those calculations. You have to really understand that so you can explain it to them.
When you think of it, it becomes a bit of a no-brainer if it funds itself in
Yeah.
a way. And then
Yes.
on top of it, they are like all of those people are participating actively in the economy and all of that. So it kind of like it has a massive ripple effect and helps in the sustainability.
Yeah. And basically we said, listen, if you don't want to be 47th in the nation for high school diplomas and equivalencies, we're going to have to do something big, and we were able to make that case.
Yeah, and then being able to continue to measure that, to show progress, and how effective it is, will at some point in time also kind of hopefully impact that ranking that is there. So
That is the hope.
That's the goal. That's why we're doing it.
yeah. When we think about, how we can leverage innovations, how we can leverage thinking about the future of adult education, what do you see as being some key initiatives that would help support how you deal and work with adult education? And Amber, I'll start with you.
Well, we have several, I think, in New Mexico that we're focusing on, but a big one is development and use of an adult education credential. In New Mexico, we have no state-level requirements for adult education teachers, and that's partially by design because we know that teachers come to us from all walks of life, all different kinds of backgrounds, and we want to honor that we have a lot of amazing community leaders now and throughout history in New Mexico who have, had a passion for teaching people in their community and uplifting their community. And I don't want to quash that in any way by requiring like a bachelor's degree or something like that. At the same time, we have values and practices and standards that we have in adult education. And we think that one of the keys to building a strong, vibrant adult education program that serves more people with high-quality services requires teachers that are well-paid and well-trained and who want to stay with us. So we think that of the many different ways that we're trying to create that, one of the ways is developing an adult education credential designed by New Mexicans, offered in New Mexico, that will be able to help professionalize our fields, help develop the identity of the people that are doing our instructing for us, and so we're hoping that that's going to also help us, retain our teachers better and pay our teachers better. And of course, the funding that we got in the last legislative session is going to help us fund this. So I'm excited about trying to be able to. Once we have that credential developed, which we're in the middle of doing now, I really hope that we're going to be able to tie that to some pay increases and, create a situation where the opportunities for teachers that we offer are more stable and more lucrative.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you're saying you don't want to create barriers because there's a need, but you also need to make sure that you have the right skill sets and knowledge, skills, and ability to be successful in the very important work that those adult educators are doing. So I really appreciate the initiative around that credential because it helps enhance the value.
Yes.
People, like you talked about retention, that's important as well. You talked about pay. There's so many elements that will continue to enhance the value of that very important profession.
I think so, yes.
Yeah. What other initiatives that you would want to mention that, again, Gallup building from innovative ideas or different initiatives that will help continue to enhance the adult education field?
Absolutely. I've mentioned over and over again our student ambassadors, and that is something that New Mexico is taking from COABE. We've taken that student ambassador training, which is phenomenal, and I would definitely recommend that for any state that is really looking for a way to effectively advocate. What we are doing is we've taken that and expanded it. So we are on our third cohort. We just finished it. And we went from having a day-and-a-half training to a 3-day training that included 4 ambassadors from the prior cohorts as trainers. So they helped facilitate the training, and in the planning process, asked themselves, what do I wish I would have learned or understood better when I was trained that would have helped me in my work as a student ambassador.
Mm-hmm.
We do require that they serve as an ambassador for a year after their training.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to see if this expanded training would increase the retention of our student ambassadors for that full year and beyond. So we did that last February. I was very happy with the outcomes of it so far. We had 7 student ambassadors who were trained and completed all 3 days of that. We were literally together morning to evening. We spent dinners together. We hung out and just chatted and got to know each other. We created a text group and communicate regularly on that. We have web meetings that we regularly attend to help them answer any questions they have or navigate what they're doing as ambassadors. We want them to also focus on local advocacy
Mm-hmm.
within their classrooms, within their programs, within their cities, within their counties. So we are just working so hard to help them figure out their strengths in that they don't always have to focus on state and federal level advocacy. They can do other things.
Yeah.
And they're helping each other. They're supporting each other in that process. And one other thing that I'm so excited about with that is that all of them are here in Dallas. Every single one of them came to attend the Students as Leaders Summit. And there
great.
were 3 others that joined them who are now, as we're speaking, taking the student ambassador training because they couldn't do it with us in February. So they're completing it, and that is going to add 3 more. We're going to have 10 student ambassadors who are now going to serve for a year and then work as, hopefully, student mentors. That's the other part of it, is after
Wow.
year 1, in year 2, they can transition to being student mentors if they wish. It's not required. And they can stay working with upcoming cohorts of student ambassadors as long as they wish and being those mentors for each other. We're also working with making connections with student ambassadors in other states so that we can expand that cohort.
Yeah.
So I am just so excited about taking that student ambassador initiative, that program, and expanding it as far as we can so that we can keep having these outcomes.
That is inspiring. I think it's great. Like it's giving them the tool and empowering them to, to succeed. That's amazing. So we're getting at the end of the conversation. I've learned so much, I have to say. This is really, again, I want to use the word inspiring again because very inspiring. So as we wrap up, any final thoughts in terms of like what you've been doing, what motivates you to continue to push forward, Amber?
Well, I really think that New Mexico is on the move. I'm very excited about all of the different initiatives that we have. 4 or 5 years ago, New Mexico's outcomes in adult education, I think because of the barriers that we've mentioned before, we were in the 4th quartile in the nation for our outcomes. And now in a few short years, we've shot up to the top of the 2nd quartile in the nation and are still growing. So I feel really inspired by that because, and the reason it's not just because we have good outcomes, which of course as a state director, I feel a responsibility to deliver, but also because what that means is that we're engaging more people. We're providing higher quality services, high-end, higher quality services. We're reaching more people. And, I really see adult education in New Mexico, not as a government program. I see it as a movement. And we strive to be truly student-centered, truly teacher-centered, and truly partner with everyone in the field. So we kind of see ourselves as a team moving forward together, a team, the state office, the professional association, the programs, the students, right? And I think the different things that we've described here kind of show those angles that we've taken to try to bring everyone together and move ourselves forward as a state. I'll just finish by saying I think that one thing that we kind of said in the beginning a few years ago is that, New Mexico, we're small, our outcomes aren't that great. Nobody expects that much of us, so we can do whatever we want, right?
And use that as the
And we
opportunity to
have,
shine.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's what I'll say. I feel very excited about the future working together with these people.
This is great. Jamie.
I definitely want to echo Amber's sentiments. Absolutely. It's a very exciting time to be in adult education in New Mexico. One thing that I am so grateful for is this increased feeling of being connected with everyone in the field. We've always been this tiny little, family, but there have been increased opportunities in the last years to really connect more personally, even outside of conferences. We're really wonderful about connecting at conferences, but with our podcast, with this credentialing system that we're developing, with the advocacy that we've been seeing, we are seeing more and more activity. I am blown away by the responses we get when we ask practitioners and students, send these emails, make these phone calls, and they're telling me, done, we did it. I can reach out to a director and have a really thoughtful conversation about things. That feeling of connection is so wonderful, and it just keeps growing and growing. And I'm so excited that we're bringing more and more students into that fold.
Yeah, the collaboration and engagement, it's like speaks volume. Well, thank you for taking the time during this busy conference. Great conversation, and keep it going. The work you're doing is amazing and very inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you.